This short video explains how to play That's Ruff. That's Ruff is a card and moving marker game for 2 players, 3 players, or 4 players. When there are 4 players, the game may be played individually, or it may be played by partnerships of 2, with each player sitting across the table from his or her partner. The deck holds 72 cards. 2 of these are wild dog cards, and the other cards are divided into 3 colored suits numbered from 0 to 13. 2 of the suits are red fire hydrants and blue dog dishes, and these 2 suits hold 2 cards of each number. The 3rd suit, black paw prints, holds only 1 of each number from 0 to 13. Notice that the 5 cards having rank 8 each picture a different dog, and that dog's name. Each player or partnership uses one of the 4 boards that each show a doghouse with a path of numbered spaces going around it. The spaces are numbered 0 to 13. The name on the doghouse matches the name of the dog on one of the red or blue cards of rank 8. If you are the player using the Lady board, then the red 8 that pictures Lady will be special for you, but not for any other player. More about this later. During the game, each player will move his or her dog marker around the path on the board. Sometimes the dog will move clockwise, and sometimes it will move counterclockwise. The doghouse is a space on the path, and the path goes through the doghouse. For example, if your dog is sitting on the 2 and must move 5 spaces counterclockwise, it will end up sitting on the 12. The colored circular tokens represent flying discs. During the game, these discs will be put out onto the dog paths on certain numbered spaces. To win the game, the dog must collect all of the discs from the numbered spaces on its path. In the basic game, the color of each disc doesn't matter at all. Whenever a dog moves onto or past a space that holds a disc, the disc is fetched and moved into the doghouse. For example, if this dog moves 4 spaces clockwise, it will collect these 2 discs. Having discs in your doghouse is a good thing. More on this later. To start the game, each player places a dog token on the space marked 0 and a disc token on the space marked 8. The other disc tokens are kept in a ready supply. If a player's dog fetches the disc that was set on the path to start the game, and also fetches all of the other discs that might later have been set out on its path, and if the dog is sitting in its doghouse at the end of a turn of play, that player wins the game. Now we're ready to begin the game. The dealer takes the full deck of cards and shuffles it, then deals 9 cards to every player if there are 2 or 4 players in the game. In a game with 3 players, each player is dealt only 8 cards instead of 9. After the deal, each player reduces the number of cards held in the hand to only 5, choosing which cards to remove. The cards that are removed are laid in front of the player and are still available to that player, just removed from his or her hand. These cards do not need to be laid face down. A player may choose to lay 1 or more, or even all, of them face up. The cards that are face up will be available for the player to play in the counting phase of the hand of play, which is about to begin, just as if these cards were still in the hand. The cards that were laid face down are cards that cannot be played in the counting phase. There are 2 phases of play in each hand. The first of these 2 is the counting phase. In the counting phase, each player, in turn, plays a card from their hand, or one of their face-up cards, into the center of the table, adding to a count that starts at 0, and announcing the new count out loud. Play begins with the player to the dealer's left. On your turn, if the count that you announce is one of the shaded numbers on the boards, any of 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, or 32, you get to move your dog, clockwise, 2 spaces. You also move your dog 1 space if the card that you played matches the color or number of the last card that was played. If the card you play matches the previously played card in both color and number, the dog moves 2 spaces. The other way your dog can move during the counting phase of the game is if you play one of the dog cards. If you play either the card showing the dog that is named on your board, or if you play the black 8, your dog moves 1 space. Remember that face-up cards can be played. Whenever you play a face-up card, you must immediately replace it with another card from your hand, laid face down. If you play a wild dog card, you can declare it to be any color or rank from 0 to 13. This player announced that the wild dog being played is a red 13, making the count 27. A player cannot play any card that would make the count go higher than 32. Luckily, this player is able to play. However, this next player isn't so lucky. With the count at 32, and without a 0 to play to be able to keep it there, the player is unable to play a card. Instead, the player says, "That's rough," and places a new disc on their dog's path at the number of the last card that was played. In this case, that card was a 5. The player then turns all of the cards that were played to the count face down and then plays a card, with the count back at 0. The counting phase of the hand continues like this until all players' hands are empty. The players will still have their face-up and/or face-down cards laying in front of them. Any cards that have been played to the count are left there. If any player has fetched all of the discs from their path and the dog is in its doghouse, the game might be over. Since this isn't the case here yet, we will talk more about this later. The second phase of the hand of play is the collecting phase. In this phase, the dogs will move counterclockwise along their paths. To begin the collecting phase, all of the cards that were played in the counting phase are turned face up and spread out in the center of the table. The players will collect these cards back to themselves in the upcoming collecting phase. Also, at this time, any face-down cards that a player has are turned face up. Each player in turn will then take one of 3 possible actions. First, if there is any way that the player can collect 3 cards that are either all 3 the same color or are all 3 different colors, with 2 of these 3 being collected from the spread out cards in the middle of the table, and the third one being one of the player's own face-up cards. Such a collection must be made. Here we see the player choosing to collect 3 cards that are all different colors, and here we see the next player choosing to collect 3 cards that are all the same color. When a wild dog is collected, the player chooses its color. If and only if a player cannot collect 3 cards, a collection of 2 cards of the same color must be made, if possible. 1 card from the middle, and the other card being one of the player's face-up cards. If it is also impossible to collect 2 cards, the player must move 1 face-up card into the center of the table, making it eligible to be collected by any player. As soon as every player has used all of their face-up cards, the collecting phase ends. There might still be cards in the center of the table. If so, they are simply discarded. Every player's dog will then move, counterclockwise, as many spaces as is allowed by the cards that the player collected. All of the cards that were collected by a player are considered together when determining how many spaces that player's dog will move. If the card collection has 5 or more cards of the same color, the player's dog will move that many spaces. If the card collection has 2 or more cards of the same rank, the player's dog will move that many spaces. If the card collection contains the dog card whose name is on that player's board, or if it contains the black 8, the player's dog moves 1 space. If the collection contains both of these dog cards, the dog moves 2 spaces. Once a wild dog is collected, it has no color and no number. This means that a wild dog does not contribute to any flush or any set, except that if you collect both of them, they are considered a pair. For example, this collection contains 5 blue cards, so the player's dog will move 5 spaces. The collection also contains 3 cards of rank 1, so the dog moves an additional 3 spaces. It also contains 2 cards of rank 12, so the dog moves an additional 2 spaces. Finally, this collection contains the black 8, so the dog moves 1 more space for a total of 11 spaces. After every player's dog has moved based on the cards the player collected, it's time again to see if anyone has won the game. If any player has fetched all the discs from their dog's path, and if that dog is back in its doghouse, that player has won the game. If 2 or more players are ever in the situation that they may have won the game, then the winner is the player who has the most discs sitting in the doghouse. In this case, the player playing Moon has won. If no player who may have won the game has more discs in their doghouse than any other, the tie cannot be broken, and the game continues. Whenever a dog is in its doghouse, whether at the end of any moves it is making or during its move, the player may choose to discard 1 or more discs from inside the doghouse rather than move the dog that number of spaces further. This means that discs in a doghouse act as insurance for overshooting the goal and give a player a better chance of ending the phase with the dog in a winning position. At the end of the collecting phase, if no winner has been decided, the next hand is dealt. The cards that were played during the previous hands are not returned to the deck. The next hand is dealt from the cards that have not yet been played from the shuffled deck. A dealer will continue to deal hands until the deck is exhausted, only then passing the deal to the next player. Whenever the deal passes, all the cards are collected and the full deck is reshuffled before dealing. We hope you enjoyed and learned from this quick overview of the game. But there's more to That's Rough, than just the rules. As you play, you'll develop strategies to help you decide which cards you may want to lay face up and which face down after the deal. You'll also realize that sometimes you'll want to avoid taking actions that will move your dog too far, or even at all. Just as importantly, you'll find ways to prevent your opponents from moving their dogs as far as they would wish, or to force them to move their dogs further than they would wish. Enjoy playing That's Ruff!